The Bills were right to fire Sean McDermott, but not based on this season. This season, like Sean McDermott was saying in this interview that apparently went down with GM Brandon Beane and owner Terry Pagula, he was saying this was not a championship caliber roster, okay? This team did not have the wide receiver core surrounding Josh Allen. This defense was not a championship defense either, okay? When you have Josh Allen, you have to surround him with a championship roster, and that simply was not the case with the Buffalo Bills so far this season. So Sean McDermott was right about the Bills this year. However, McDermott's firing is justified for similar reasons why John Harbaugh's firing was justified, and for similar reasons why Mike Tomlin's firing was justified, because you cannot keep running your head into the wall if you're the Buffalo Bills. Despite McDermott completely turning around the Bills franchise, taking them to the playoffs for the first time in his first year as a head coach in 17 seasons, going to the playoffs in 8 of 9 seasons, winning the division 5 straight years from 2020 to 2024, his playoff history got him fired. The last 7 seasons, he made the playoffs, 2 conference championship appearances, but 0 Super Bowl berths. And when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, who certainly isn't blameless, but he's been a top 3 quarterback in the sport for over a half decade now, that is an absolutely unacceptable resume, especially considering how poor the defense, who is your specialty, the defense is the reason why you got hired, Sean McDermott, has been poor come playoff time every single year. So yes, it was the right call to fire Sean McDermott, even though he was right about this year's roster. So, Sammy, I got to kick it to you, man. What do you think? Was Sean McDermott being fired the right call for the Buffalo Bills or no?
It's interesting and why it's interesting is because, like, we've seen so much success from the Buffalo Bills for so long, and they've been dominating the AFC East, and we always gave them this excuse, well, they're running into Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's kind of like when the teams in Utah back in the 90s, they ran into Michael Jordan in the finals. They were good enough to win. They just ran into a buzzsaw in Michael Jordan, an all-time great athlete. And with the Chiefs and the dynasty that they are, the Bills would run into them and they'd lose. So you gave them the pass. But this year in particular, while I agree the roster was not exactly up to par, it still seems like a tipping point. See, just because the Broncos have Bo Nix and the rest of the path, it's like Drake May, it's Drake May, it's CJ Stroud, and it's none of the top 5 QBs in the league that you would think of, right? It's none of them. Although you could say Drake May's top 5 and I probably wouldn't argue with you. But anyway, my thing would be they're running into QBs that are not as good as the ones they faced prior, right? You're not running into a Lamar Jackson. You're not running into Joe Burrow. You're not running into Patrick Mahomes. You're not running into these guys. You ran into Bo Nix, and Bo Nix, to give him credit, he played a pretty good game. The reason he played a damn good game was mostly because the Bills had 5 turnovers. And this is where I want to bring up Josh Allen. Josh Allen, this was the first game, I feel like, in a very long time where it was genuinely his fault. Like, this is the first game. So I think everybody's saying, oh my goodness, why are you firing McDermott? First of all, Josh Allen was like Mr. Playoffs. He was outplaying every single all the top 5 QBs. Josh Allen was outplaying him. He just never won the game, except for like maybe one game against the Bengals. 283 yards, 3 touchdowns. The reason you were still in the game in the first place was kind of because of Josh Allen. Like, the reason this game went to overtime was because of Josh Allen. Like, everything that had to do with this team being successful was Josh Allen. So Sean McDermott being fired, it felt like a breaking point because you have such an elite QB talent. And maybe we shouldn't be mad at Sean McDermott being fired. Maybe we should be mad at the owner promoting Brandon Beane. Because in my opinion, it's like when I heard the word promotion after seeing what had happened. Are we serious? The roster this year that your GM constructed, you expect them to take it that far? It just wasn't going to happen. It just wasn't. When Dalton Kincaid is your leading receiver in the AFC divisional in a playoff game, when Khalil Shakir is your best receiver in the season, I'm sorry, that is a problem. And yes, Brandon Beane hit on the defensive side of the ball. Brandon Beane drafted Keon Coleman. How'd that work out? He's on a fast track to be nobody. If he doesn't get it together, I'm rooting for the kid, but it's just getting really bad. So I'm not too mad at this firing. What I'm more upset about is that Brandon Beane got promoted, and it just didn't feel right to promote him because he had not done a good job on the offensive side of the ball And I feel like Sean McDermott, for all his faults, there was a lot of defensive talent that nobody really thought was going to be as good as they were. There was a next man up mentality that Sean McDermott brought to the team that led them to deep playoff runs anyway. The roster wasn't right this year. Like it just wasn't the roster to win it all. It just wasn't.
It wasn't. And that's why I said in my spiel, I was like, he did not get fired for this season. I think he did a damn good job this season piecing together this defense. And again, the defense was okay throughout the course of the year. Obviously, they had problems against the run, but the fact that they were in some of these games was a lot because of Josh Allen and a lot because of Sean McDermott kind of piecing together this defense that was banged up for the majority of the year. So again, he did not get fired for this season. He got fired because in his last 7 playoff losses, he allowed 31.6 points per game. That's why you get fired. You allow 33 points to Bo Nix. Granted, 5 of those other games, 4 of them were against Mahomes and 1 of them was against Joe Burrow. But still, okay, from 2021 to 2023, Sean McDermott led 3 defenses in the top 5 in points per game. And they still allowed 42, 27, and 27 points in those 3 respective playoff losses. So again, the defense has to perform better. It simply does. But to another one of your points previously, Sammy, we cannot let Josh Allen off the hook here. We simply cannot. Josh Allen, who I said before this game, and it's funny how before the game I put out a short and I said, I think Josh Allen is basically going to carry this team to a win. I think the Broncos are the better team, but I think Josh Allen's going to carry them to a win because he's freaking Josh Allen. It turned out, watching the game, it was the exact opposite. I was watching that game and I'm like, man, I think the Bills are the better team. Josh Allen is just beating them. Like Josh Allen is literally beating the Bills himself with all these terrible self-inflicted wounds. And another point that goes along with that, we've seen Josh Allen a lot in the postseason. He's had an opportunity. He has the same thing last year against Kansas City. He has the ball down late or tied in the fourth quarter with an opportunity to win the game, and he hasn't come through. We can say what we want about Sean McDermott. We can say what we want about this defense. We can say what we want about Brandon Beane constructing a subpar roster, which is obviously the case. But at the end of the day, if Josh Allen wants to be considered the best player on the planet, which a lot of us had considered him prior to the game last week, he has to come through in those situations. It's that simple. Point blank, period. Now, again, to your point, Sammy, about Brandon Beane, why the hell are we promoting Brandon Beane? What's happening? Like what? Like at what point did this deserve a promotion? Like I just don't understand. For Brandon Beane, you're still living off drafting Josh Allen. That's a hell of a selection. That's a franchise-altering selection. Like you do deserve massive credit for selecting Josh Allen in 2018. However, since then, and I got these nuggets from a Sports Illustrated article written by Ralph Ventry, so shout out to him. A lot of really good nuggets in there. The Bills have drafted 56 players from 2019 through 2025. Sammy, you know how many of those players have turned into Pro Bowlers?
I'm gonna guess like because they don't really have that much talent. It's like 3. 2 Pro Bowlers. Okay. One of them was Dawson Knox in 2019. Somehow Dawson Knox made a Pro Bowl, and the other one was James Cook. Yeah, Dawson Knox made a Pro Bowl in 2019. That doesn't count.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't count because
look, Dawson Knox, we love you. It doesn't count. I'm sorry. I just can't count that. Come on now.
Sammy, you want to know why it doesn't count? Because they literally drafted another tight end in the first round to replace Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. So it doesn't count whatsoever. Okay.
At all.
So one of their 2 Pro Bowlers doesn't even count. The other one's James Cook. Obviously a good selection with James Cook, led the league in rushing this year. But still, okay, he's obviously hit with some free agents. The Diggs trade was a great trade, obviously sped Josh Allen's development up a lot, but a lot of these moves that he's had over the past half decade have been terrible, especially the skill positions. He just hasn't really spent the draft capital on them. And again, this stat this nugget I also got from that same article. Other than trading the 2020 first round pick for Stephon Diggs, Brandon Beane never dedicated any pick outside of a day 3 pick to drafting a wide receiver. So the only, besides one, the one pick that he dedicated that wasn't a day 3 pick to a wide receiver was Keon Coleman. And we just saw Keon Coleman get DNP CD'd basically by his coaching staff in 2 separate games this season. So again, terrible selection. Also, in 2019, the Bills moved up to round 2 to draft offensive lineman Cody Ford, who is now who was terrible with them and was not on the team after 3 seasons. By the way, wide receivers A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf were selected later that round. So again, terrible decision right there. And then in the 2023 draft as well, everyone passed on Puka Nacua a few times, so I'm not going to blame him tremendously for passing on Puka Nacua. However, okay, they used their 5th round pick on wide receiver Justin Shorter, who never played a single snap for the Buffalo Bills, and then the Rams picked Puka Nacua 27 picks after that. So again, Brandon Beane has been a tremendously awful general manager the past half decade. He drafted Josh Allen, great job. He traded for Stephon Diggs, great job. Obviously, the James Cook pick was a great pick. Other than that, he has not done very much at all to be to let alone stay the general manager of the Buffalo Bills, let alone get a promotion. It just ridiculous. Baffles me, Sammy, how the fact he could get a promotion after all this.
And on top of that, like from 1999 to 2017, they went through 5 head coaches in order to get to Sean McDermott, who eventually led them to their most success since they went to the Super Bowl 4 straight times. I hope to God that you can find somebody with that level of success. So somebody who's won the division 5 consecutive times, because Sean McDermott is going to get hired by one of these teams with a vacant head coaching spot.
Quickly.
And he's probably going to change the culture over there, and they probably will have success. Okay, so of the pool of coaches who are available, you better pick right, or this president of football operation promotion that you just got is going to last very, very shortly. The rosters that this guy Brandon Beane built were not good enough, and having all of your success just based on how Josh Allen and McDermott had the defense playing, it was never sustainable. And look, I can't believe we picked the Bills to make it to the Super Bowl with this roster, Matt. I really can't. But honestly, it was just the faith that we had in Josh Allen. It was the really blind faith we had in McDermott's defense. Brandon Beane, count your days, brother, because I don't think you're going to be president for very long.
Yeah, and Sammy, to your point, obviously these rosters weren't constructed well, and they did not give Allen the best chance to succeed. And to your other point, McDermott is going to get a job very fast. Like, I think there's 6 available head coaching openings now. I think he's probably the number 1 candidate for all these teams that have openings. I think Ravens and Steelers, obviously that would be a kind of a natural fit, similar style head coaches to the ones they just had. But we've obviously seen McDermott have more success than those coaches in recent years. And then also, if you're the Browns, if you're the Raiders, if you're the Cardinals, like organizations who need stability and who need maybe a more strong culture setting defensive presence, I think Sean McDermott could go in there and do an outstanding job with those organizations. But I think the Bills were still in the right to get rid of him because, like I said, it just been kind of running your head into the wall. You hadn't been able to get over the hump. But I think both parties are going to be better for it moving on because, again, like I said, can't keep running your head into the wall if you're the Buffalo Bills.
This has been Between the Uprights. Football is life. The rest is just details.